Welcome back to Free Football. I'm Free. Let's talk football. You ever sit down one day and decide that you're going to try to correctly predict the outcomes of 272 football games? Well, I did. Some teams got assigned a lot of victories, some teams not so much. Some of those teams might surprise you, some of those teams might not surprise you. But there's one team in particular that got credited with a lot of wins that I want to talk about today. I want to talk about the Dirty Birds of the NFC South, the Atlanta Falcons. Stuck in the depths of mediocrity for the last 3 years under head coach Arthur Smith, the Atlanta Falcons have gone 7-10 the last 3 years in a row. This despite taking 3 top 10 offensive weapons in the last 3 years. Their point differential's been a little bit up and down the last 3 years. 2021, they got outscored by 146 points, brought that down to just 21 points in 2022, and last year they were outscored by 52 points. But they had 3 different starting quarterbacks all 3 of those years. They had injuries scattered throughout, and they could not take advantage of a pretty weak division at this point. Call it coaching, call it quarterback play, call it some bad luck too. If you want to point to that Tom Brady play when they played the Buccaneers a couple years back.
Scans the field and gets sacked. Brady Jarrett brings him down. A flag comes out at the end of the play. Oh my goodness, this is going to go on Atlanta.
I don't think Brady slammed Tom to the ground. I think he's coming around and he's got him by the hips and he's rolling through the tackle.
Defense, number 97.
All of that changed on the first day of 2024 free agency, March 11th, when Kirk Cousins signed a 4-year, $180 million contract with the Atlanta Falcons. Now, say what you want about Kirk Cousins, but he's a good businessman who got his money and has done well for every team he's been with, even if the playoff success isn't really there yet. You got to do good in the regular season if you want to make it to the big dance, and he's done that pretty consistently throughout his career. The 4-time Pro Bowl quarterback is now a member of the Atlanta Falcons, and frankly, it's the best quarterback they've had since Matt Ryan in his, MVP days. When you pair a great budding young wide receiver like Drake London with a very young, still promising tight end in Kyle Pitts, and an equally very young and very promising running back in Bijan Robinson, with the 6th ranked offensive line per Pro Football Focus coming into this season, looks like a pretty good formula for wins. The team also added Darnell Mooney of the Chicago Bears in free agency. They just signed Justin Simmons, who seemed to be waiting for the right opportunity to go to a new team this offseason. And then they just traded for Matthew Judon not too long ago from the Patriots. And the new coaching staff, they have Raheem Morris, they have Zach Robinson coming over from the Sean McVay LA Rams situation. All those coaches seem to do pretty well in the NFL. I think it's pretty telling that Matthew Judon came over in the trade, and despite having some issues with the Patriots, doesn't seem to want a new deal with the Falcons, and he wants to prove it after having his, I believe, a bicep injury last season. I mean, if that's not a vote of confidence, I don't know what is. Maybe Judon should have a talk with Hassan Reddick about that. It really helps that the Falcons have such a friendly strength of schedule as well. It is the weakest by a good amount in the NFL, and looking at their win-loss record this year, I just feel like they're going to take advantage of it. Here is what we have for the projected win-loss record for these Atlanta Falcons. As you can see, there's a lot of winnable games on this schedule, and there's probably certainly some surprises here too. I have them going 8-1 at home this year, 5-3 on the road, losing at Philly, at New Orleans, and at Tampa Bay. 10-2 record versus losing teams, 2-2 record versus playoff teams in my projected standings. And yes, that does put them at 13-4. And if that sounds familiar, on a Kirk Cousins-led team that probably overproduced in the regular season, that's because he just did it a couple years ago with the Minnesota Vikings. Now, I get that he's, 36 years old and coming off an Achilles injury, but I just feel like the pieces are there for Kirk to succeed. You have a situation where Kirk Cousins is coming from Kevin O'Connell, an offensive disciple with the Los Angeles Rams, to Zach Robinson, an offensive disciple with the Los Angeles Rams. I feel like there's going to be a lot of similarities in the scheme and the language. Feels like something Kirk can pick up pretty quickly. The Falcons wanted him, he wanted Atlanta, and he signed so quickly they got hit with a tampering charge. This feels like the Falcons had a plan all offseason, and Kirk had a plan all offseason, and they believe in the health as evidenced by the contract, and I just have a feeling it's all gonna work out. Now, will they actually win 13 games? I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot of areas where they can take advantage of a poor schedule here. Obviously, week 2 against the Eagles, we've seen Kirk Cousins at the Eagles on week 2, 2 years in a row, actually. He's going to be there for the 3rd year in a row. Eagles seem to have his number. I'm not counting that as a win. But I do have him bouncing back against the 2-time defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs at home in week 3. Now, the way I do my season predictions, I try not to just look at which team is better. I'm going to blindly give them the win because they're better, because that's not how the NFL works. So I definitely try to throw in some surprise wins and surprise losses scattered across the schedule. And when I looked at this game, I couldn't help but get vibes from the Chiefs last year when they went to Indianapolis to play the Colts. You're in a dome, out of conference against a team that you're not really familiar with. Maybe some things go wrong and maybe the Falcons start the season 2-1. From there, they get a little bit on a roll. They beat the Saints, Buccaneers. They win a road game at the Panthers and beat the Seahawks before losing 3 straight at Buccaneers, home against the Cowboys, and at the Saints. And then I have them winning their final 7 games. And I don't think you could really fight me on a lot of those as far as games they have no business winning, right? Part of this, too, is you have to believe in the defense as well. And yes, they lost Calais Campbell and Bud Dupree. That's not going to do them any favors. But the addition of Matthew Judon is a big one. Grady Jarrett had an ACL injury last season that he's fully healthy from, and this team has an over-under of 9.5 wins. I don't think it's so outlandish to say that they're going to win a couple of these coin flip games, even if they are against strong opponents. Oh yeah, and they just signed AJ Terrell to another 4-year contract extension last week. When doing these season predictions, there's always teams with good vibes and bad vibes. The vibes out of the Falcons is that people are really excited for this season. People are really excited for the addition of Raheem Morris. People seem to want to play for Raheem Morris. Now, it is a unique situation for Raheem Morris, who's in his 2nd stint as head coach. He had a long layoff in between his head coaching stints, and his first one is kind of forgettable. Coached 3 years with the Buccaneers, went 3-13, followed by a 10-6 season, and finished with a 4-12 season. To his credit, he went back to the drawing board. He's been a defensive coach in the NFL since 2012, spent a lot of time with the Falcons organization, was with the Rams for the last 3 seasons, and now he's back coaching the Falcons as head coach. Sometimes it's hard to tell who's going to be a good NFL coach and a bad NFL coach. We always seem to think that these coaching hires back in January and February, they're all home runs, but we know some aren't going to work and some are going to work. This one just feels like it's going to. I think if you have competent quarterback play and competent coaching with great weapons, you take a team in a poor division that has had a lot of one-possession losses in the last 3 years under the previous regime. It's hard for me to believe that the pendulum doesn't swing a little bit in the Atlanta Falcons direction. So yes, I do have them going 13-4, and I'm going to stand beside that. But fear not to the Falcon haters. I don't really know why you would hate the Falcons unless you're a Saints fan, because the Falcons haven't done anything of relevance. But just in case you are one of those people, I do have them losing in the wild card round to the Green Bay Packers, getting the 2 seed, but losing again to the 7-seeded Green Bay Packers at home. But that's a story for another day. Maybe tomorrow. Hit that subscribe button and maybe you'll see. And that's all for free football. Take care.